press engagement sets the stage to share the forum's key messages, highlighting progress on the ground and reinforcing the call for inclusive governance and regional cooperation as drivers of peace, social cohesion, and development in the Sahel.
Honored to be joined by an executive panel of leaders who bring both global experience and direct engagement in the region. Firstly, on the panel, we have the Minister of Information, Media, and Broadcasting Services, Dr. Ismaila Cisse. We also have Ms. Anne Ionu, Executive Director of the Goodluck Jonathan Foundation. We have Ms. Njoya Tikun, the Regional Director for West and Central Africa, United Nations Development Program. And International IDEA, we have Dr. Roba D. Sharamo, the Regional Director for Africa and West Asia.
Together, they represent the breadth of partnership, governments, institutions, and communities working to build a more peaceful and inclusive Sahel.
Welcome to this press conference as part of the activities of the Sahel Governance Forum. It is both an honor and a privilege to speak here on behalf of the government of the Gambia, but also the people of the Republic of the Gambia. We are pleased to share this platform with you to discuss the theme of this governance forum. Now, as we all know, the Gambia has been through a journey in our quest to transition from autocracy to democracy. We all know the history. We had a government in place that was authoritarian, where rights were abused, there were enforced disappearances, the freedoms were muzzled, there was no press freedom. And then on the 1st of December 2016, Gambians went to the polls and voted for for a democratic government. Now, since then, we have embarked on reforms. We've embarked on a TRRC, which tried to take stock of the past, which institutions failed under the dictatorship, so that we can heal and path a way forward. We've also embarked on TJ mechanisms as well. We have also strengthened our anti-corruption frameworks, promoted press freedom, but also promoted the freedom of the judiciary as well. So these are the opening remarks. We welcome you to Banjul, and we are looking forward to receiving questions from you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I have a question for International IDEA, Dr. Saramo. Your institution is involved in a lot of research. I want to know about your thoughts on how data-driven approaches can better support democratic institutions and inclusive governance in the Sahel.
Honorable, this is Sahel Convergence, and here significant representation of the Sahel countries, that is Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. We don't see, I mean, of course, we have one representative, but a significant representation. We don't know what is the cause of that. And also from here, whether there will be engagements so that, you know, they can join the bloc.
I also represent the voice and face of Africa's young people. I understand as a representative from West and Central Africa. That would be you. So my first question would be to you. Sahel states increasingly seeking non-traditional partners, for example, in Russia and China. How are regional institutions adapting to this shifting geopolitical landscape while preserving regional autonomy? And in light of these divided allegiances, where does that leave the African agenda of fostering economic integration, cohesion, and just Africa becoming a global force for the future? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, please.
Moderator, and also thank you very much to the members of the media and the journalists who are here. And also let me also thank the Minister for his opening remarks, His Excellency, really for setting the scene. So I think the question from here, right, is about data-driven and that would really help us in promoting democratic governance, if I understand. The international idea basically does three things, and I always like to just bring that to the front line. We are committed to promoting democracy worldwide, and we do that through various processes. One is looking at promoting constitutions and constitutionalism. I think the very foundation of a stable state is really fidelity to the constitutions and also those constitutional principles which are there. Then we work in that regard in also promoting countries, particularly if we speak about the countries in the Sahel region, on the return to the constitutional order. And you can only do that through understanding public surveys and public attitude surveys to understand the different perspectives from the different segments of the society. We'll also do research, for example, in terms of engaging through participatory mechanisms with the institutions that are rebuilding those states. We talk to the communities, we talk to the youth, we talk to the women to really understand their aspirations. You know, and constitutional changes of government is a phenomenon that has really been in the Sahel region, as I said in the opening remarks earlier on, it's also in the Horn of Africa. So we try to really understand the needs of the youth. If you look at the data from Barometer, which was cited also this morning, 70% of Africans would like to live in democracies, right? So we try to understand the roots of this, the drive for change, and also find a way of guiding countries to get back into the fold of a democratic, stable society. So we do produce a global state of democracy report every year that tries to measure over 172 indices, tries to look at about 4 key, looking at how representative is the government of the day, you know, the aspect about representation. How participatory is the politics in that country? Is there space for the youth? Is there space for the women to participate in those politics? Is there, and also we try to look at the checks on government, checks on the executive. How effective are parliaments? You know, so research that really looks at even the quality of the parliamentarians that we tend to have around our own country, and also look at particularly around elections. Look at the electoral integrity. Are we just doing election just to tick a box? Are we really looking at improving the quality of elections, providing technical support and assistance, and understanding the needs of even electoral commissions as they prepare to do elections? So we do a lot in terms of research, in terms of promoting the use of data. There's a lot of investment that we do in terms of digitalization, and also really, of course, the work around artificial intelligence now is extremely important in condensing huge amount of data into a summarized format that which you can use to really make informed decisions. So we try to look at all those aspects in many ways. So the data-driven approach, but beyond the data also turning this research into bits that policymakers, governments can actually utilize to make change. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Stating that perhaps there is no representation of the Sahel states. I understand that they are indeed represented here. They were in the room, so maybe that answers the question, that they are represented.
Is the former, prime minister. So I would know why the government authorities there, the current government authorities there, are not represented here. That was what I was trying to find out.
Oh, a very good question. Very, very good question. But the truth is that in the room, we do have government representatives from all 10 Sahelian countries. And if you stay till the end, you'll see some of them on the panels. We have directors from ministries. In fact, we had a couple of ministers that had actually confirmed, but last minute, 1 or 2 of them were held back. What we did when we started this process was to consult all the countries and the current government. You have to understand, we are the UN. We work with everybody. We're usually in these countries before transition, during transition, after transition. So we don't necessarily have the restriction or the liberty to pick and choose which partner. And when we came to see His Excellency here with President Goodluck Jonathan's Foundation, we were quite excited that we were bringing all of these. We have government officials from all the Sahelian countries at technical level, like we did with the other countries. The other countries, we also brought in technical level officials. You will see them on some of the panels as we proceed. I think Fatu asked me a question on geopolitics and changing. It's a very good question. I think we can spend a day discussing what's going on in the region. But there are three things happening with the geopolitical realignment that we are seeing. First, there's the external geopolitics, where we're seeing a new rush of external partners coming to re-engage Africa. You mentioned China and Russia. But on the other side, there's also a shift in the Africans themselves, saying they want to reassert their sovereignty. And the truth is that the Africa we have now is not the Africa of 1960. It's an Africa that must also be allowed to form its own partnership and decide on who they want to trade with and who they want to do geopolitical alignments with. So as the UN, all of the countries you've mentioned are members of the UN General Assembly. They are UN members. And we have an obligation as a United Nations to work with every United Nations membership. As a matter of fact, we are just a secretariat. It's an organization of member states. So for us, we don't necessarily have those, we don't have restrictions in that sense. However, what you've mentioned, which makes a lot of sense, is the shift we've also seen in funding. We had relied as a multilateral system heavily on certain geopolitical structures. The realignment that is happening globally is pushing us to work with our governments to shift the focus of how development programs were funded from overseas assistance to domestic resource mobilization. So right now, our focus is not necessarily realigning ourselves with the geopolitical shift. It's looking at the member states and them guiding us on what they think we can help them in these new negotiations that they're having with government, how they mobilize their own resources domestically to fund their development program. Our job is to accompany what the member states on the ground see as priorities for their people. And this also falls very well with the you asked about the African agenda and the African integration. I mean, the African Union has a very clear blueprint for what it sees as 2063 agenda for the continent. We have a continental free trade. We are hoping that that presents a blueprint for trade integration in the region as well. So Fatu, geopolitics is there, but the truth is that the countries in the Sahel, the countries in the region, they are asking to take their own responsibilities. Our job is to accompany them do that as the UN. Thank you.
So I want to listen your foundation. What are they doing in this drive to ensure that the corruption is minimized? Because there is a lot of corruption, especially here in our this country. Just 2 weeks ago.
Can you ask your question, please? What's your question?
I say my question
is what the foundation is doing.
What is the
thank you.
In this drive?
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. The ED will now take
Thank you very much for your question. It's interesting that question is actually directed at us, even though we're not government. Ordinarily, that should be a question for government, but that hasn't stopped the foundation from carrying out initiatives that strengthen our democratic process. For us, we believe that when democracy works, when governance works and is inclusive and everybody is carried along, these issues that we have would be reduced. And we have an interesting MOU with the UNDP. I'm glad that the head of WACA is here, Andrea is here. And part of that MOU is how do we promote peace and prosperity? How do we strengthen our democratic process within the West and Central African region? We don't have the power to say people should stop corruption. We can only appeal. What we have is the power of moral appeal, where we have, because of who the founder of our foundation is, we have access to political leaders at the highest level. And so we sit down to have conversations with them. We sit down to engage with them on how to promote good governance in their countries. What we can do as a foundation is only appeal and develop programs that help government and all relevant stakeholders in strengthening and putting a check and balance in their government processes to avoid waste or that would aid corruption. As a foundation, our primary focus is on promoting peace and prosperity on the African continent. And so our initiatives are tailored towards that mission. For instance, we were here in 2020. Was it when you had the elections? We have this forum called the West African Elders Forum, and we use this former heads of state and to provide interlocutory role or an advisory services to political leaders at the highest level. I'm glad he's seated here. He was a candidate at that election. You saw what happened when some people rejected the announcement of the results at that time. We stepped in, engaged with all the candidates, and helped reduce tension. So while we may not have initiatives that promote or strengthen corruption, we do work in a separate way. And that our work is, if you don't have peace, like he said, peace and prosperity, if you don't have stability, you can't have prosperity. And so we had to mediate to reduce the tension in the country. I'm not sure you are aware, but we were here to reduce the tension in the country, and so that Gambia could think we should be doing, but we look at how the sub-region, because the lot of issues we have in the sub-region really are as a result of poorly managed elections or bad elections, where people lose trust in the electoral process. For us, how do you build the trust of the citizens again in the electoral processes, so that they don't lose the trust? Because when the trust between the governed and the government is broken down, there's nothing we can do. And that's why we are here together. Today, we are at a pivotal moment in our history as the Sahelian region, where the region faces a lot of challenges. And when I say let us talk, how do we rebuild our social cohesion? How do we build trust so that, excuse me, so that governance can work for us? There's an African proverb that says that even when spiders their web can tie a lion. That's what we're doing here today. We're uniting to try to fight the issues, the challenges that we are experiencing in the Sahelian region. And we hope that we will proffer solutions and recommendations at the end of the day that governments of our respective countries, of the 10 countries within the UN strategy of the Sahel, would adopt towards reimagining governance for all citizens in the Sahel.
From my young brother there, I think there is it's a packed question. How to fight extremism, how to fight unconstitutional changes of government, and also mediation and building trust. I think it takes quite a holistic approach. There's need for holistic approach. I think if you look at this report that I think UNDP have really done, I must congratulate my brother here and the team that have really came up with a very robust document. I mean, it's important for particularly the young people and the media to actually keenly read the recommendations in this document. And constitutional changes of government, it really comes when, elements, let's say within the military or some sort of popular uprising comes out and takes out whichever form of government, whether it was elected or a government that has been there. So to address that, AU has a lot of normative frameworks. ECOWAS also have different instruments on peace and security. So the whole thing now, looking at where the Sahelian states, particularly, let's focus on that, is how do you strengthen the institutions? How do you strengthen the institutions that's providing law and order? How do you promote social, economic stability? How do you provide food and also livelihood for the societies? If you look at countries in the Sahel, there's also an element of climate change that is really eroding the livelihood systems of the communities. And the governments have also not been able to really, generate revenue to be able to really stabilize. So we must look at first return to constitutional order, whether it's through election or dialogue or form of transitional administration, have a governments which are accountable, provide opportunities for women, youth, and marginalized groups to be able to be part of that. Dealing with extremism as well is there are so many strategies to use. Of course, the law and order, the security enforcement is one, but it's also about looking at social fabric. How do you strengthen societal social fabric? How do you ensure that extremist narratives are also countered at different levels, right? And the other one is also about mediation, providing opportunities for dialogue. For while you are strengthening institutions, while you are rebuilding social contract between the masses and the administration, but also provide opportunities for dialogue. The role of ECOWAS, the role of the UN, the role of international NGOs and others is extremely important to bring the society back to the drawing board and also reconstitute the state, in that order. But I think it's something that we can talk about the whole day, but briefly, that's what I can say. Thank you.
What is ECOWAS' position on certain things? Unfortunately, I cannot speak for someone else's code, because every code has a context, and I would be saying the wrong thing if I want to interpret his code. But also, I cannot speak for ECOWAS as well. I'm here to represent the government of the Gambia. So that question perhaps could be forwarded to ECOWAS if you want the right answer. Now, coming to Fatu's question, before I go into your question, I think that's a very important question, Fatu. The TRRC recommendations revolved around certain fundamental issues, promoting transparency, accountability, but also strengthening institutions and also creating the new legal frameworks, but also building new institutions as well. I think the government of the Gambia has done a lot in responding to the TRRC, to the recommendations. One of them is that we strengthen anti-corruption frameworks. We came up with a new anti-corruption law, which is called the Anti-Corruption Act. It has been already passed. The shortlisting is done to make sure the commissioners are in place. We have also strengthened other institutions like the National Audit Office, which was non-existent under Yahya Jammeh. Now it is very active. It has been given the liberty and the latitude to go to any institution, any MDA, and do audits. And these audit reports are out there. I think the reason why many people feel that corruption has increased in the Gambia is because of two things. One, reporting has increased. Under Jammeh, there was no vibrant media. There were no investigative journalists. But also under Jammeh, institutions that were supposed to expose and fight corruption were non-existent. But now these institutions are alive. Like the Public Accounts Committee of the National Assembly, the Public Enterprise Committee can call any minister to Parliament and ask questions. We have modernized our procurement laws as well. We have also modernized our public partnership laws. We've gone digital. Now the GRA, before, now the revenue is over $2.6 billion every month. But also we've gone digital. We've stopped payments at offices. Now everybody makes payments at the banks. So we have also come up with other institutions. We have come up with new laws to promote democracy and the so-called act called the Access to Information Act, where any citizen can write to any public official that is an information holder and ask for any information. As long as that information is not exempted for security reasons, you are bound by a law to provide that information. So there is transparency. We've also strengthened the Ministry of Information, where now we pride ourselves in proactive disclosure, ensuring that the public doesn't have to ask for information, but we provide the public with authentic, accurate, and relevant and timely information through our many initiatives. So yes, we understand the right of citizens to come out and protest and express their displeasure, perhaps in the slow pace of reforms. But we've done a lot of reforms since the new government has come to power. And sometimes we have to understand that systems that has not been functioning for 22 years, we can't expect them to be perfect in 8 years.
I mean, that in a way is also solidifying the notion that corruption has been here since as old as mankind, like the president once said. What that is sending me is that you're normalizing actions that have been condemned for years. And what we're looking forward now is change. And that is why these young people will continue to protest. Yes, they were underreported. Now they're being reported. That means it is still in there and ingrained.
But no, but it depends. It depends.
Okay.
If you permit me, before, now we are taking action. That is what is important. We are not allowing.
But are you holding public officials to account? Who have you prosecuted?
No, listen, that's what I'm saying. Now, government is three arms. As a government, our role is to make sure there are investigations and there are prosecutions. It goes to the courts. And because we have an independent interfere with what the courts are doing. But it's a process. Like I said, we've got many cases at the police level whereby they send it to the AG chambers for prosecution. If it goes to the courts, fighting corruption in a democracy is different from fighting corruption in an autocracy. What people want us to do is under Jammeh, Once there is a suspicion, arrest people and put them in mild. We cannot do that. There are processes, there are laws. That is rule of law. When an audit report comes out and there are suspicions of corruption, what the government can do is to forward to the police for investigations. When it is established that there is wrongdoing, it goes for prosecution. It's now with the courts. You cannot expect the executive to jail people when it's in the courts. One of the we cannot influence what they are doing. What we are supposed to do, we are doing it. We've strengthened institutions. Audit reports are coming out. The police are investigating. They are forwarding cases to the AG chambers for prosecution. That is what we can do as an executive. Now, when there was this whole issue about the Jame assets, we instituted a parliament inquiry which is on. So it's not like we're not doing anything. We are fighting corruption. If we are serious about fighting corruption, we wouldn't bring a new act called the Anti-Corruption Act. We wouldn't allow the National Audit Office to have the liberty and the latitude to go after any MD and audit them. Even the president's office is audited. So some of these institutions now we are building, and we have a commitment to fight corruption, and we are holding people accountable. And there was a key issue with the Ministry of Fisheries where the permanent secretary was found guilty of corruption. He was jailed. So government is doing all it can to fight corruption. We are very committed. We know it's a problem. We know it's a challenge, and we are doing everything we can do to fight corruption. Now, go to the next question about the local solutions. What we did is that to ensure there's ownership of reforms. Yes, we understand that when transitions happen, international organizations come with solutions from abroad. Obviously, there are templates. There are transitions elsewhere they want, but we ensured that our reforms are locally owned through national consultations, but also engagement of civil society as well. And also, we also did what we call community engagements, integrating traditional systems and customs and norms into the entire TRRC process, and also ensuring that youth and women are empowered and also are part of the process. When it comes to regional solidarity, we try to collaborate. First, we applaud ECOWAS for helping us during the transition, but also coming up with a stabilization force at that time, which is the economic forces. They are still here as part of this stabilization force, also post-democratic reforms. We also promote collaboration with the AU and the UN to promote international human rights norms. These include charters as well, good governance charters. But also we collaborate with regional partners to deal with common challenges. And these challenges include migration, peace-building efforts, but also organized crime. Thank you.
The question, Fatu, I work with 24 countries in the region, and I can tell you for sure that corruption is our biggest problem in Africa. This is not a Gambian issue, to be fair with you. It's an African struggle. And to be honest, it's what every government in the world, including very developed countries, faces. The approach, I think, that most countries in Africa, including the Gambia, like the minister has explained, which is very similar to what other countries have done, two prone. One is the institutional strengthening, because for a long time, we didn't even have institutions that could respond to some of these governance challenges. I'm quite pleased to hear that in the Gambia, there's all this effort that have been put in place, at least to get the basic first, which is institutions, right? But the biggest challenge of corruption is a mindset. It's not necessarily the remit or the exclusive power of the government to fight corruption. It's a whole of a system. It's your responsibility, it's my responsibility. Because I was in a different country where I was asking a teacher, and I said, how can we blame the minister or the governor in this case for corruption in a school where you are stealing the books that are meant for the students? I think we as Africans, I'm talking now as an African, I think we have a degree of responsibility that as our society, we have to take to say we want to change our society. It starts from our own household. Before we even start involving our governments, I think there is a collective responsibility as Africans to fight what we think is the biggest dragon that is holding Africa back from progressing. It's not an easy discussion, Fatu. You will not get a solution today, but I'm sure that I think the explanations that His Excellency has given is very similar to the struggle that a lot of the countries in the region are.
That UNDP, I just want to know how the UN can help to ensure that the Sahel Governance Forum that we've launched today leads to a concrete coordinated action among regional and international groups.
And it's well embraced by the youthful population, which makes up about 65% of the entire population. In your perspective, is democracy still the most viable option for this region? I would like to.
Thank you. The last question, please. Yes.
Oh, yeah. My question is also to the UN. ECOWAS and the Alliance for the Sahel are working towards maintaining regional security, addressing the insecurities in the region. And we know these countries are faced with a lot of security challenges. Just yesterday, more than 50 people were killed at a military barracks in Burkina Faso. I want to know to what level is the United Nations involved in these discussions between ECOWAS and the AES country, and also trying to find solutions to these insecurities.
Thank you very much. So we will now take the responses.
Thank you very much. Let me respond to the question from my sister there. Of course, I think at the very beginning, said, there are popular uprising in most of the countries, particularly in the Sahel, and majority of the people were also on the streets, including the Gen Z movement in Kenya. And I'm a Kenyan, so let me speak to that as well. Is really led by the youth, because the youths are getting very disillusioned by their governments. And it's also about the issue about accountability, the issue about fighting corruption, which is spoken about, the issue about providing opportunities and employment, particularly for the youth. So I think it's really important to look at it in a holistic manner, that the governments are set up, could actually deliver services to the people. The elements around social contract. If the social contract is not met, then it becomes a problem. Then to your question about democracy, I think I will just look at what the Afrobarometer survey says about African youth, the ones you just referenced. 70% of the African youth would like to actually live in democracies. So democracy is still a preferred model of governance, but it's not perfect. It must deliver. But it's also the alternative to democracy is also autocracies, right? Autocratic regimes. I don't think the African population would like to live in autocratic regimes, but we want the democracies which are there to deliver for the people, to really respect and uphold the social contract which is there. So democracy is struggling in many places, but I think we need to find ways of perfecting it and making it more accountable and responsive for the needs of the population. Thank you.
My brother says that there's really no one-size-fits-all democracy. I think what we've come to learn with what's going on in the world is that every country must define what it sees as a democracy, but there's some basic concept of civil liberties that we have to respect in all of these democracies. But, the notion of democracy, as it were, when we started this conversation with the Bretton Woods institutions, it's not the same today. I have two questions. I'll try and answer quickly and then I'll stop so that the minister can close for us. On the Sahel Governance Forum, thank you so much for asking that question. The report we launched today, the Future of Governance in the Sahel report took us a year and a half to develop. We spoke to more than 2,000 people, civil society, youth, women, government, traditional rulers, to come out with this report. And as we said in there, the central theme was, how do we reconnect the states to its citizens? How do we reconnect those who are governing us and those they are governing? And in the report, I hope you would find time, as my brother mentioned, to read the report. It's important that you understand what's going on in our region. We came out with some key recommendations, and you're asking, how do we help coordinate action coming out of this? One of the symbolic thing we wanted to do as the UN with the government of the Gambia and President Goodluck Jonathan's foundation, an idea was to first create a platform like this. Because if you run your mind, you would realize that over the past 10 years, there's never been a governance platform like this for the region. They've had peace and security. They've had security, but we've never had a forum where we come together to discuss issues of governance. And what I hope we get from here is an understanding of the new social compact that is needed to redefine the kinds of governance that our countries each can contextualize and roll out in the region. We will continue to work with these governments. This is just a beginning, But we're hoping that whatever comes out from here can help us on the policy side, on the programming side, and even on the geopolitical side as well. IS, I was going to just borrow the minister's word on ECOWAS in answering this IS question, but you asked the UN. I said before, before IS, we had Manu River, we had Liptako Goma Authority, we had Lake Chad Basin. It's countries have decided to create another regional security institution. I don't think by itself it means they don't want to continue to collaborate with the Gambia, with Senegal, with Nigeria, with Cameroon. I think intrinsically these countries want to continue to partner, and I think they've demonstrated that they want to continue to partner, but they want to also have a regional bloc that defines how they secure themselves. ECOWAS has been very clear. Dr. Toure mentioned it. I'm not going to guess his quote. As my brother said, I will pick from the chief. But I think for the UN, our role has been through the office of the representative of the Secretary General, is to continue to work on political dialogue, is to continue to ensure that between ECOWAS and the IS countries, there's a corridor of conversation, and also with the people, bringing in the people in these two blocks, to ensure that whatever concerted agreement it's arrived at, that it's arrived driven by the voices of the people and not necessarily just the voices of the government. But we have offices in all of these countries as UNDP. Just like we have a strong office in the Gambia, we have UNDP offices in every country in Africa, and we work with the state and the people. We've never left. And so if we are called upon to support, we would find a way to support the countries and support their development plan. And the UN has come up with what they're calling the flagship proposals for these three countries, which touches on some of the issues of cross-border cooperation and security that you mentioned. I'll stop there.
For me, since there was no question again thrown to us, the Goodluck Jonathan Foundation, after my executive director left, it's just to say that I'm very, very well impressed by the level of the vibrancy of the media of this country. It is commendable. It's actually being driven by the young people, and it is good that more and more African countries allow the media, as is happening here, to begin to hold the government feet to the fire. That is the only way we'll have transparency, and the only way we'll have good governance. And I also commend the government of the Gambia, because I know what it was like 10 years ago, 5 years ago. You wouldn't have the media engaging the government as you are doing now. So what that tells me is that the government has the skin and the temperament to tolerate criticism. And that's the only way you can build trust and build good governance. So this should happen increasingly in many African countries. And like the Assistant General of UN said in the hall at the opening, that this is the African time to find solutions to these problems. This is the only way we can succeed in doing this. So I thank you.
Then we are going to call on His Excellency, the Minister of Information for the Gambia, to close the press conference. Thank you.
Thank you very much, co-panelists and members of the press and those present here today and the moderators. I think what this has shown is that the Sahel states are the crossroads. The world is changing around us very rapidly, and we have to adapt to these changing moments. Otherwise, it will be perilous for us. Our demographics are changing. We have a youth bulge, a more youthful population, which can be a youth dividend or a threat. It depends on us. Geopolitics is changing, and global relationships are now more and more transactional. The questions that we are asking and the issues that were pertinent in the immediate aftermath of decolonization are still pertinent: poverty, corruption, development. And now we are asking whether the democratic models we have adopted are useful for our development. I remember one famous American president who was also a philosopher said that democracy is the worst form of government, except for those that have been tried from time to time. And like my brother rightly said, democracy there's no fit for all. In ancient Greece, they called it democracy, but women were not voting at that time, but it was democracy. In the US, in the 60s, it was democracy, but blacks were not voting. In South Africa, it was democracy before apartheid ended, but blacks were not voting. Now, if you go to China, they call that system democracy with Chinese characteristics. It is democracy, inclusive, participatory. It is democracy. Who counts it's not democracy? It's time for us to define or redefine our own democratic that fits our people, our demography, and our situation. The debate continues. This is time for the Sahel to grow and emerge and collaborate to solve our common problems. Our people face the same problems in the Sahel. I think if you don't collaborate, we'll be left behind. And if we are left behind, next generation will not judge us. Thank you.